there is still no word on a cure for the virus, government officials report the virus is not airborne. When asked, a White House spokesman declined to comment on whether or not this was a terrorist attack. The virus is spreading rapidly. Government officials are reporting that there is no known cure for the virus and is urging citizens to stay in their homes and avoid contact. Riots nationwide are prompting local governments to declare martial law. The president is asking that citizens find safety and remain calm. Authorities are working on a plan to contain the outbreak.
People don't really understand it until you actually see it coming at you in a wall of flame. Everything is so dry here, and it's been drying out for, 2 years. So it's very volatile. And of course we have the eucalyptus, which is in the air. It's volatile too. So it just explodes. It's very, very terrifying. The fire still came at us, even though we were very well prepared. There was over 200 firefighters here from various areas in Australia that were helping us to fight the fires. The lack of water, of course, is a big problem, so we had to ship in water tanks, etc., to actually deal with it. People were using blowers to blow back the sticks and the grass and clear the area, but it didn't make any difference with this fire.
Breaking news in this Sunday afternoon, five-time NBA champion, former league MVP Kobe Bryant died earlier this afternoon in Los Angeles in a helicopter crash. News reports are just coming in among multiple victims. Kobe Bryant on that helicopter.
My name is Ernest Jones. I'm the chairman of the trustees here at Community Bible Baptist Church, and I've been chairman of the trustees for several years now. Additionally, I'm a deacon here as well. I came to Community Bible Baptist, I guess, about 10 years ago. I felt very comfortable coming here. A lot of the members that were here I already knew, so it's not like I had to get acquainted with the whole bunch of people.
I am Reverend Dr. Rosalind Hunter Berry. I am a licensed pastoral counselor. I have a grief counseling ministry at Community Bible Baptist Church. With that ministry, I offer grief support to those that have suffered loss, whether it be death, fire, divorce, family members in prison, foster care, whatever the loss is. We do group work, and sometimes I do one-on-one as well. I mainly focus on working with children in grief because usually they're forgotten when the losses occur because the adults are going through so much that they don't think about the children. So I mostly work with children, and we've been blessed to have the support of Jackson South using their community room there for free. They donated to us to do the program, so that's been a blessing.
The church that I came from, I had not been there for a while, and I would be out at the school, Coral Reef Senior High School. I'd be out on the track working out, and I'd see the pastor, and I think before I initially came here, I had seen him several times, and each time I saw him, we'd have a conversation, and I told him, "Hey, Pastor, I'm going to come and visit. I'm going to come and visit." So I decided to follow up on that. I came to visit one Sunday, and then I felt right at home. As I said, I didn't have to get to know people that were there because I already knew them.
The reason that I started the grief ministry because in 2006 my son was murdered, and he had a 5-year-old daughter at the time, and she needed help, and I couldn't find help for her anywhere, so I went back to school and became a grief counselor. And so that was in 2006, and when I came to the church in 2012, I believe it was, I asked Pastor if I could do during a Wednesday night study, a presentation on grief and loss. And that came about because one of my other friends who was a member here had lost her son. And so we just thought we would give out information on grief in the church. And I didn't know at that time that we had suffered a lot of losses here at the church, and people were really hurting. in the church as well. So from that ministry and information that we did those Wednesday nights, the grief ministry came about.
I think as far as in the building process, I think the land had already been acquired when I came to the church, but we didn't have any functions out here except for prayer meetings on Monday night, I believe it was, and I attended a couple of those prayer meetings, and it's very inspiring, and it just inspired me to come more and more. Then all of a sudden, as time went on, we had a vote to accept the proposal that the bank had given us to start breaking ground, and the ground was broken to start the church. We had a lull in there. We had another offer from the bank to go ahead and finish the building, and we started that process. We signed the papers to start that process, and we started it, and here we are now in the first phase of this building, which is our in the long range is going to be our fellowship hall, but it's our sanctuary right now. The second phase of this building here is going to be the school. We're looking forward to opening up the school, and we've made progress in that phase, and we hope to continue.
What do you want?
Justice!
When do you want it?
No justice! No peace! No racist! Police! For the mothers! For the mothers! For the mothers! My son wasn't given a chance to live. I have a chance to live, so I will risk whatever it takes to say his name. Marcus Brown! Say my son's name, Marcus Brown! Say my son's name, Marcus Brown! I don't know all of their names, but what I do tell you is I stand for all the mothers out here who lost their sons to police brutality.
Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter! Justice! Now! Justice! Now! Justice!
It's unbelievable that we have to keep doing this. It's embarrassing for our nation. And if we have to be violent, we have to be violent. But I definitely roll with peace. Because they say a COVID virus, is supposed to keep us in the house. That's not going to keep anyone in the house when people are being killed, when people are being slaughtered.
Take your knee off our necks! 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 Take your knee off our necks!
This is the emergency broadcast system. This is not a test. Repeat, this is not a test. Stay tuned for further instructions. This is not a test.
We have a vaccine that's coming. It's ready. It's going to be announced within weeks, and it's going to be delivered. We have Operation Warp Speed, which is the military is going to distribute the vaccine. I was in the hospital. I had it. And I got better, and now they say I'm immune. Whether it's 4 months or a lifetime, nobody's been able to say that.
And you didn't have a musician at the time. Marilyn Smith was the choir director. I started having rehearsals at my house so that we could have somewhere to rehearse because we didn't have anywhere to rehearse.
I just remember I had to keep a calendar on when it was my Friday evening to go out there and set up, because setting up was a job, and then I would always, through the service, I would listen to the service now and participate, but I would always remember that we had to break the church back down and then set the building back up for school that Monday. And it became pretty tedious, but it was something that, you tried to have fun at doing it. We tried to do it safely. But those were times when you're like, oh man, I'll be glad when we finish the building so we won't have to do this all the time. One of the most tedious parts of that process was setting up the standards that we had to separate the finance committee, so they will have their own little place. We have to set that up for them, and setting those standards up for that was quite a job in itself.
The children came at 6:30 and the adults came at 7:30. KJ and both Oldie were kids, and they started out, and I believe they started out with us, but they were so determined to play the drums that they just found in themselves the extra time to study and learn how to play the drums.
Oh yeah, there was always a spring festival. I forget the official name for it, but Raquel would always spearhead the community festival that we had out on the property. In addition to that, we'd always have that Good Friday service out on the property with the 4 churches, and we'd get a big tent, and the tent would stay out there too after Easter. And during Easter services, the kids will go out there and they'd have their, after service, they'd have their little Easter egg hunt and get prizes and things. And again, the community carnival was one of the biggest events that we had out there, because it would bring out the entire community. It would bring out vendors to sell their wares, their goods, and people would have fun, eat and have fun. Once we started the building process itself, physically starting to get the building up, there were some trying times with some of the workers, with the contractors. They wouldn't do the work properly. They would go long periods of time before they came out to do things that they should have taken them, a matter of days to do. It would take them really a matter of weeks. So we kind of had to push them.
Mother was she turned 100 years old. I failed to say that. She turned 100 years old. The pastor had asked her to become the mother of the church. She moved down here in 2008. And so she lived down here for almost 5 years before she passed. But the church welcomed her and made her feel very welcome during her visit, her stay down here. When the choir first started, and I was here with them, we were young. We were just getting together and trying to learn our voices and learn songs. And so it was a challenge sometimes, but we used to try and do our very best. And on Sundays, I don't know if you remember Sister Juanita Floyd. She used to sit out in the congregation, and if we were singing an old time song or some song that she really knew, she would be mouthing off the words to us and just to help us along the way. And we used to chuckle about it at rehearsal. We enjoyed Sister Floyd. We didn't feel offended by it because we knew she was just trying to help us. When we used to have family and friend days, there was one dish that I loved. Barbara Driver used to make this Georgia pot, and it was delicious. When you ate the Georgia pot, you didn't need anything else, maybe a little bit of cornbread to go along. One thing I remember when we, as being a musician, we had a piano over there, but the church purchased a keyboard. But I used to have to bring the keyboard every Sunday. And that was a trip, because I used to have to bring the keyboard. It was heavy. So I used to have to get my husband to put the keyboard in the car. Then when I get to the church, I would have to get somebody to get it out the car and bring it in, and then we would set it up. And then after church, we would break it down, and I had to get it back to my car, and then I had to get him to bring it back in. So that went on for quite a while. And then finally, I just decided I can't be doing this every Sunday, carrying the keyboard every Sunday. So we found a place to keep it there at the church. But I remember at the school, this is why I appreciate us having our own, because we would have to do those kind of things at first. We didn't have any storage. We couldn't just leave our setup. We had to get in there in the morning, set it up for church. Then we had to break it down after church so that they can be ready for school the next day.
One of the main things when we first started, they got a hold of an architect. And in that architect and his firm, there was one particular architect that worked on our building, and he was he's very, very, very detailed in his design. And the pastor will always tell you that when people came in and was trying to shortcut some ways and trying to see ways we could save on money, there were some things in there we took off of the design, but one thing he kept certain was there was always like these 3 points that he designed all the church with. Come, let me show you. One of the things in the building, when you look, you'll see everything is kind of like in 3. You have 3 windows. These little cutouts with the sunlight coming in. They were in 3 points. 1, 2, 3. And the guy would say it's designed that way because one is for the Father, one is for the Son, and one is for the Holy Spirit. And so everywhere in the building, you'll notice these 3 points all over the building. One of the things, as people was talking about the pastor, one of his favorite moments of the day is when noon. You see up here, we have the chandelier, and up there, these windows. And through the windows, sunlight, there's a natural light that comes here. And exactly at noon, it comes and it shines directly here on the altar. And it even shows right here on the Bible that's placed on the altar. And it's one of the things that happens, and when it happens sometimes, so many times the pastor will pause and just acknowledges it. And so the building itself was designed this way, and many things that went into us getting the building. I never forget, as we were talking about the loans.
There's something about night prayer that is just so powerful. Meeting with the Lord surrounded by his creation is what it was like meeting at night on this church to pray for this land. It gave me a sense of peace when we were here at night, just talking and communing with the Lord. As we gathered on the land, we believed in the power of prayer. This church in general believes in the power of prayer. We want to be known, and we desire to be known as a praying people, as a praying church. And in the community, I think we have that reputation of being a praying church. So many people dropped by as we were praying on that land, and they brought so many tidings of happiness for us. And they were just astounded that we would sit out here in the middle of the night with nothing here, not even a building, in some chairs praying on this land. When it feels like everything is coming apart, we lean on the Lord and our church. And so the church is, to me, is a community of people who care for each other and who love and worship God. And that's the church. All of these things can happen even when people can't gather in a building. We can pray. We can read our Bible. We can still support our neighbors. And the fact that the building is closed has no bearing or ability on my ability to do those things. Striving for holiness in everyday life is something we're all called to do. And so that's what we should be doing, whether we can come to this building or not. Nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, can stop the work of the Lord. The 60s didn't stop our churches. The race riots didn't stop our churches. Lynchings didn't stop our churches. The Lord's church, it gives you strength, and it kind of hardens your character to weather all kind of storms. And so that's what we should take from this, that we will persevere through the worst times. And guess what? We're going to come out on the other side even stronger, is my belief. The first mention of the church in the Bible was in Matthew 16. In this passage, Jesus brought his disciples outside of Jerusalem and asked them who they think he is. In verse 15, Peter responds by declaring, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God."
One of the loans, the first loans that we had, what was special, as I mentioned earlier, that the inflation of the cost of building materials caused us to not get not for the bank to hold up their end of the loan. They were able to get out of the deal because of the total cost of the project isn't what they agreed to finance, I should say. And so when that happened, we still had to pay the loan at the rate as if we had gotten the entire amount for the loan. That was like, I believe it was like 2.6 million, somewhere in that range. And so we were paying those payments. But what happened, even though we were doing that, and it was kind of hard to do that by funding the building project, paying rent, and still doing that. But what happened was we were paid off the loan on the land very, very quickly. And so we were able to get freed up from that loan. We then went out and pursued and got another loan with the higher amount for the higher construction costs. And something happened. Deacon Storr, who, if anybody knows Deacon Storr, also known as Brother Poochie, he was infamous for two things: race car driving, not driving, but race cars that he would tune up and suit up, and he was a master plasterer. He would go and do this plastering. So those two men wanted to work on the church and see it to its finish. And so Deacon Allen would have been the person with all this experience going into the project. And Deacon Brunt just got his general license, a contracting license, was able to help. And what happened was, what Deacon Brunt did, what no other contractor will do, is allow us to purchase the material ourselves. That's how most of the contractors, that's how they make their money. They put they pack the price to make it more to get their profits. And so him allowing us to buy at that cost with our tax exemption and just paying him a flat salary allowed us to start building, start working towards building the church. And so we were able to get a loan, not for the whole amount, but we were able to get a loan that would cover a good portion, allowed us to start working. So that's what we did. We got to work, and everything we were able to cut on, we were able to cut on. And so Deacon Allen was head over this and overseeing the project. So as they started doing it, and if you know anything about the pastor, he's involved in this thing, he's always going to be there. And so he started coming out daily, along with Deacon Allen being here, and then Deacon Frierson was right there too, and he would come out and see about the land daily, and so a lot of some of the gentlemen in the church would come out and see about the property. But in that, they had these infamous breakfasts they'll have at Walter. I believe it was on Thursdays. They would go eat breakfast at Walter's and come on out to the property. Pastor was known for coming by with bringing the crew members food and lunch, and so and so people would really put their hearts into working for the building, because the pastor showed them so much appreciation. They were reciprocated back.
And after such an important revelation, we might think the Lord would speak more about it. But instead, as soon as Jesus confirmed this revelation, he responds by declaring, Upon this rock, I build my church. So you know what? The church is here. And so no building can stop you from praising your God. I especially liked the pastor, one of his messages, the half has not been told. Oh, when the preacher preaches that message, I love that message about the half ain't been told. Because we won't know the whole story until we go to glory and walk the streets of gold and meet our Savior face to face. And so I love when the Pastor Ronald Smith, preaches that message. The half has not been told. We've seen so many miracles in this church. We've seen so many healings in this church. As soon as you think that we don't have enough, guess what? The Lord provides. He provides in ways that we would never, ever imagine. And so guess what? As we are in this crisis, I want everyone to remember that the Lord will provide. He will provide. What you have to do is continue to walk in his way and walk in his will, and the Lord will keep you.
And so one of the things that ended up happening was we lost our dear brother Poochie. He had just plastered the outside of the church, just finished it. Took a little vacation, went down to the Bahamas, came back, and then we lost him like a week later. But he had finished doing that work on the building. And he always talked about it, he just wanted to finish that building, and he finished that. Later on, we would lose our dear brother Deacon Allen. And so now all of a sudden, now we're in a situation where, Deacon Mr. Brunt was still general contractor, but he had lost his main guy that was overseeing the church. And so they ended up hiring another general manager. But the thing about it was, Pastor had been under Deacon Allen so long, and he's shown him the plans, and he learned so much just by being out here. He started doing a lot of the legwork, and Deacon Henry Jones would come out, and he did the same thing, and so the work continued, it didn't stop.
Well, the church started at Joe Delancey Park, and I did attend one of the Bible studies at the park. I was not a part of the conversation where the church actually got started, was brought up, and to move forward to buy the property. But shortly after the church moved into the school, Pastor Smith reached out to me to teach a woman's group during the training union hour. At Glendale, I used to teach a study called The Mind of Christ.
I remember that first meeting when the Lord called Pastor out to preach. We met on the park, and that was our first gathering of the church. And we then discussed some things. Everyone was all for it. And you had folks that came out and wanted to put down payments on the church building already. And in that first meeting, we talked about the minister of music. And, I said, well, Sister Lee, that was my choice for the minister of music. But she accepted that. And then they talked about a choir director. And so I don't know notes. I don't know. But you know what? I've never sang before in my life. So I know that this is a gift from the Lord. Because I never sung in the shower. You know how most people try. I've never. And so when you sing, you sing from here. And that's what the Lord gave me. I told the Lord, I said, not the choir, Lord. I'll do anything else but get in that choir. Because I knew that my voice was no good.
And Pastor Smith asked if I would come over and teach the women of Community Bible Baptist Church The Mind of Christ. So I enjoyed the atmosphere while coming. And then when I was coming, I was invited to attend a Christmas program performance. And I brought my whole family. My daughter Tony, my daughter Tammy came, her boyfriend Andre, and Erica. We all came over for the Christmas presentation. We could not all sit together, and my daughter Tony was sitting in the chair right in front of me. And the Spirit spoke to me when the doors of the church opened and said, she gonna join the team. And sure enough, when the doors of the church opened, she joined. And then one by one, the rest of us came.
So that's why I know that the Lord touched me, and He gave me, whatever I portray to sing or whatever, the Lord gave me that. And I remember that meeting, and so they said, well, Marilyn, the choir director. Oh boy, I thought that was the end. So of course, when the Lord gives you something, you accept it. I've learned that. You don't run from it. You ask the Lord to guide you and lead you, and I did. And so the Lord led me and guided me into that. And I just remember everybody being so excited in that meeting about forming this church. I remember it so well that Pastor gave his vision of what he thought that the church would be. And so all of us came out. I believe it was 29 charter members. And I was one of the charter members, and I was excited to get this church started. And we didn't know it, but at that night, that same night, this church was started. Me and Sister Floyd, God bless, and may she rest in peace. She struck out with a song, and I just loved Sister Floyd because she would sing them old songs, them old Zion songs. And so when I would listen to her, I would try to remember the words so that I can sing it later. And she would strike up that song. There's a storm over the ocean, and it's moving this old way. And if your soul's not anchored in Jesus, you will surely drift away.
So this is the land of property where Community Bible Baptist Church sits. Right out here in the early days, there was nothing on this land. If you see over there in the far reaches, that roughage over there, it was mounds and piles of things that people had dumped out here on the property. And so we were able to get rid of those mounds. The grass was so tall because it was never like cut. In this area, we used to have our prayer meetings. Now over here where you see the fence, people always ask us about that fence. They remember seeing barbecue grills out there, but one of the reasons why we had the fence put up, very early on, the church received a donation of 2 old Metro buses, MTAs, and we had built the fence so we could park it right here on our property. Now over here, you see this building, this massive apartment building. Now, if you recall, we talked about how the church, when we originally went to apply for the zoning, we couldn't. There was a lawsuit going on with the zoning code that facilitated religious buildings. And but we went through the zoning hearing. We were able to overcome and be able to build our church.
About the 60s there, a gentleman named Frank C. Crawford, who was a military captain. He purchased this land. It's called Richmond Heights, and he did it for his servicemen who were black, who were colored men in the service, and he wanted them to be able to buy homes in a nice area made of good material. And so we had family in the military, and so we came and we moved down into Richmond Heights, where the pastor has been for a long time. I'm saying we, but our family.
My daughters felt so at home at Community Bible Baptist Church, and so I knew that I had been praying for my daughters to anchor into Christ. And one Sunday, the Lord just spoke to me. It was the Sunday before Mother's Day. And the Lord just spoke to me while I was sitting there. And he said, now you done asked me to bring them. I done brought them. And they need you to come. What you waiting on? And I just got up and I came, and I haven't looked back since.
And so I loved that song, because if your soul's not anchored in Jesus, you're going to drift away. So we would strike out and we would sing those songs. And I tell you, everybody would go, sing along with us. And those songs was a source of encouragement. They encouraged a lot of people that may have not had a good day that day. And they would come to that prayer service. And those songs, I would see the light in folks' eyes when those songs were sang. So we can even minister in song. So praise the Lord for that.
Cope South was where we were able to come and worship. And so in that first weekend, 1 week, he was able to get and acquire a place for us to worship.
Well, when you have property like this, right here on a main street, you have a lot of people that want this land because it's such a valuable piece of land because it's right here on 152nd Street. And I remember that a lot of folks came out to that hearing, the first zoning hearing we had, and were in protest against. And I guess that so many folks, they come and they want to have the land zoned a certain way, and then that's not what they put on the land. But Pastor Smith was able to assure them that this land would be for the building of a church.
When I first came to the church, one of the things that surprised me, even though we were in a cafeteria, it was set up for church. It was set up like church. And so there really wasn't much missing in terms of a church. But the services that went forth, whenever we had special events, we were able to set up for the special events. Probably the most difficult part was setting up, breaking down. But you know what? Everybody joined in. Everybody helped. The services were special. Was mostly just Pastor and Orlando Reed at that time preaching. But one by one, God filled the pulpit, and Sister Conyers. And one by one, God filled the pulpit. He filled the pulpit. People rose up, and my daughter Tony wanted to do the programs. She asked me to ask Pastor Smith because Tony was very apt at technology and developing programs. And she asked me to ask Pastor Smith if she could do the programs. And it was the one little thing that she can do given her condition. But she did them, and she did them faithfully. Sometimes we would run out of ink like midnight, and I'd be down to CVS buying ink. So she was diligent at it, and everybody was diligent at what God had called them to do. And we were just like, it wasn't abundance of people, but we were just like a little family. And love was so abounding. And that was the one thing people always said when they came, that the church was very loving. And they really felt at home. Even though some people came and didn't stay, they still felt welcome, and then they still felt loved. That's what I really remember about us early. And not that is not the atmosphere now. That's the atmosphere now. God has just given it to us on a slightly grander stage.
Many of the early services, before we had even the piano player, before we even had a choir, many times Sister Marilyn would get up and sing. Early in the church, being that was a school, we were located in the school's cafeteria. And in the school's cafeteria, we would have to set up and take down. We had to take all the chairs and tables from the cafeteria, and then we set it up as rows. And early, the pastor himself, Jeremy, my brother, would come out and set up those chairs, and Jeremy and Pastor would sweep up all the area to make it and transform to a church. And then more and more, some of the other young guys would come and help.
I joined Glendale Baptist Church in the year of 1971, end of the summer, coming into, I believe, September. And I was on the way to my 12th grade year in high school, and I joined under Pastor Joseph C. Coates Sr. Didn't take long attending there. With the training that he had, they'd asked me to become a Sunday school teacher. And I don't know how that came about, but I guess the Lord saw something in me. And so I started to learn my Sunday school lessons so that we could have a good lesson on Sundays, and we could grow that young men's class. And at the time, it had diminished. Our Sunday school teacher was approaching 99 years old, and he was ready to step down. And there were only 2 or 3 of us coming. And so I took the book and gave it to the other guy and said, you call all the guys and I'll study the lessons. And we started growing the class, and over the years, that class grew and split to about 4 or 5 times.
During my tenure here, I have served as the church clerk and presently as the Minister of Education. It has been a blessing and an honor all throughout the years that I've had that opportunity to do so. You know, when I think what it has taken and will continue to take to bring a work to completion, I think of 3 points with Community Bible Baptist Church. And in our early years of the church, there were components that brought us to where we are today. First, many hours were spent listening to when God spoke. That was the first one. The second was believing in God when he spoke. And the church had to do that. And the third was to step out on faith. And not only step out on faith, but to act as well on that belief. It's simple. It was just doing what God asked us to do. And that's what we did.
Then I started attending the prison ministry. And in that prison ministry, the prisoners would always ask me whenever I taught a lesson there, was I a preacher? And I kept remembering the scripture that even when the disciples did not recognize Jesus, Satan did. When he cast out the demons from the demoniac, they say, Jesus, that Son of God. What has that to do with me? But when he asked disciples who he was, they had to say Elijah, some said this person, that person. And I said, well, I think there's some demons in the prison that probably know that God is calling me. And anyway, time went on, and Hurricane Andrew came and destroyed a lot of the South Dade areas, a lot of the house that we were living in. And during that time, the airport where I was working, and I was in management, had to start restructuring and getting the airport where we could accept flights. And I was doing a lot of mission work really out of the airport because I knew South Dade, and they had a lot of food to distribute to our employees that were down here in South Dade. And a part of that, me going into management, I was told that the county will pay 50% of my college for me to finish my college degree. And so I decided to take it.
The thought of getting the property was a far reach because we were such a small group. And we probably did not have the funds that we should have had for such a prime piece of property at that time. But God was with us. And while we were going through the process, I passed by the property one morning. Pastor started talking about the property. And I passed by the property one morning. It was early in the morning. And I saw Brother Floyd walking on the property. I just thought he was getting exercise. I didn't really think too much of it. But I mentioned it to him that Sunday. And he said that God had told him to walk that property. And everywhere he walked, God was going to give it to us. Immediately, I thought about Moses. Because God told Moses to walk. And everywhere his feet walked, that God was going to give it to him. So Brother Floyd was our Moses.
Went to a Catholic university, Berry University. And in that university, we were required to take at least 6 credit hours of religion. And so I took the New Testament first. And in that teacher, the professor there was an ex-priest. He and I became good friends. We talked a lot. And so I came to the second term. I decided to get the other class out of the way, the Old Testament theology. And he was my professor in that class. But we moved to a satellite campus that they had there. And in that satellite campus, the rooms were smaller. And so he told me on the first day of class, I have a problem. And the problem is they gave me 60 students like we were in the regular university, at the regular university campus. And I need you to take half of the class. I'm going to put 30 in this room, 30 in the other. I need you to start teaching the theology of the Old Testament. And so I said, me? He said, yeah. I said, I'm not a preacher and I'm not a professor. He said, I know your faith and I know your knowledge of the Bible. Start teaching, I'll be back. And it was then that the Holy Spirit spoke to me that now when your house is torn up, everybody's life is in an uproar, you're trying to go back to school, now is when I want you to receive the call to preaching the gospel. And that's what I did. And when I went to tell Pastor Coates, he was writing something on his desk, and he never looked up, and I kind of thought that maybe he wasn't listening to me. And when I finished, he looked up and he said, I wondered what was taking you so long. So that's how I got called to the ministry, and thank God for that.
He kept calling the owner back, and the owner just felt bad because he kept calling. He's like, man, I could try to find some other land that I own, I can sell it to you, And he's like, no, this is where, the Lord showed me that the church is going to be. And so one day, the owner calls him. He was, as it was told to us, he was switching planes from one airplane to the next. And this man, he calls and says, hey, the deal fell through, and, make an offer on the land. I never forget when the pastor told us this. He said, they said, well, what about $1 million? And the guy laughed because the land was worth like over $2 million. And pastor said he laughed too because he didn't have the $1 million to give him either. So turns out, he said, you know what, let me check on some things and call you back. And because we had already incorporated as a non-for-profit organization, the gentleman called back and said, he would donate so much towards the amount of land, and even hold that first mortgage for us. And so we was able to acquire the land. This is something, and just if you stop and think about just how God has blessed us in that. Anybody else would have given up when he called and said, hey, we're in the final stages of this deal. But faith showed them, and the Lord showed them that's where we were going to have it. And sure enough, we were able to acquire this land.
And I remember one day, I was passing by the church. I had my daughter Tony with me because I was taking her to a doctor appointment. And we rode by the building and the walls were up. And I had not seen it for a while. And at the same time, both of us reached the same reaction in the car. And it was a reaction of awe and pride, and it happened to us at the same time. We were like, whoa, the church is actually coming up. And so we were elated to see the progress, and it brought such hope and such for us to look forward to. And in spite of the stalling, and in spite of the setbacks, and in spite of the money issues and the building codes and the many other issues that we experienced, still to some degree we're still experiencing, we never stopped praying, and we never stopped praising. We never stopped going to that property. We never stopped feeling ownership and pride in that property.
And our journey, believe it or not, started in January of 2000 in the home of Pastor and Cynthia Smith. And we started with prayer services there, our weekly Bible studies. We moved into the park where we had our studies. And eventually we obtained a lease with the Cope Center.
What led me to start Community Bible Baptist Church was the fact that at Glendale, we had a new pastor at that time, and there were a lot of things changing. I was one of the associate ministers, and I was the chairman of the trustee board. And in the midst of a lot of that chaos that went in them getting a new pastor, one of the things that was suggested to me by the new pastor was that I look into the Miami Baptist Church Start program. And so I went to the director of the Miami Baptist Association, and he and I met at a funeral, just so happened that same week. And he was talking about they needed a church on the east side of Richmond Heights and on the close to Fairway Heights. And they were looking for someone to do a church startup. And so I said, well, did they have someone in mind? He said, no. And I said, well, I think I'm the person because God's been dealing with me on this issue. And so I had already started a community Bible study, which we had on the Richmond Heights Park. And we used their athletic building there. And we led that study every Monday. And it was called the Community Bible Study. And so when we kept doing that class, and I started talking about the Church Starter program, the Lord told me to present a plan to that Community Bible Study group.
And from there, we had, within that same year of 2000, we had our inaugural service. And from that service, we chartered 29 members into our ministry. The church at that point consisted of Sunday school, discipleship, women on ministry, music, and pastoral. And the membership, which has always helped us, was taught the Word of God and also the purpose of the world and the community. And Pastor led us in that direction throughout all this ministry.
This is for Pastor Smith. One of his favorite saying is, "This is just the way I am." And God, that is no excuse to us to go, to sin or to do anything against God, because this is the reason why God died. He sent his son on Calvary to die for us, to change us from just the way we are. And I thank God today because Pastor, he preached the word, the unadulterated word of God, and he's also funny, he likes to make you laugh. And I just thank God for a pastor like Pastor Smith. And may God continue to bless him in all that he do and all that he say. Amen.
This has been a wonderful, wonderful, great man of God. I mean, he is amazing. And I thank God for him because he gives the word, he tells the word, and he shows the word. And he definitely walks the walk. And his favorite thing is that he liked to tell jokes and stuff. And his favorite joke is about when people always talking about how they love God, but they don't show it. So he said he had a friend one time and said he was telling him that, oh, I love the Lord. And then something happened to him. And then he was like, man, what happened? He said, I think God forgot all about me. So I'm saying this to say this. In 2020, I can say one word that would describe this man of God. And it is,
yes.
Oh, yes. And oh, yes, he is a man sent by God.
Father, I thank you for the pastor that we have. I know he's been very good to us. I can go back from the time that when I joined this church in 2002, when my father passed. Deacon Moss and him, they came looking for me. They went by my house. I wasn't home, and they didn't stop looking for me until they found me over my sister's house. And both of them prayed for me. And Father, even during that time, that made me feel real good. I felt I had found a church and a pastor that I can talk with, I can explain, I can say anything that I have to say, and he can understand. I know he might not know, but I know how much it meant to me.